In this video, I will show you how to use a super optimized 32 gigabyte images for AVD deployments in order to save on the cost of the OS disk storage. Now, word of caution that it is very difficult to reduce the size of a typical Windows OS with all the applications and still have enough free space on the system drive, on the C drive, and fit within 32 gigs. But it is possible on some very, very highly optimized images. And in version 3.1 and newer of Nerdio Manager for Enterprise, 32 gigabyte disks are supported. So there's really 3 steps to the process. Step number 1 is you actually have to log into your image VM and make whatever changes at the operating system level so that your usage on the C drive is well below 32 gigabytes. So when that volume and disk is reduced to 32, you will still have enough free space to not run out of free space when VMs are created. That will be step number 1. Step number 2, there is a scripted action under Azure Runbooks called Shrink OS Disk. This scripted action is available, and by default, it is configured to shrink the disk to 64 gigabytes. However, it is a simple matter to change this to 32. All we need to do is go to clone, call this Shrink OS Disk to 32 gigabytes, change our label here, and then change the variable of disk size from 64 to 32, click clone, and now we have a new scripted action that's going to take care of shrinking of a particular VM. Once we've done and created the scripted action or cloned and modified the scripted action, we can go to one of our images. For example, here I have a Windows 11 image that I created. I can now go to run script, and from the Azure Runbooks, I'm going to type in shrink OS disk to 32 and click OK. And this is going to perform the process of actually shrinking that disk from a standard 128 gigabyte, which is what came from the Azure Marketplace, down to 32 gigabytes. Again, assuming that you've done the work in the C drive to reduce consumption well below 32 gigabytes. So there is plenty of free space left. Once the image is reduced to 32 gigabytes, our final step is actually to deploy session hosts using a shrunk down 32 gigabyte image. And that is done in the standard way, nothing special here. We're going to go and create a new host pool. And you'll notice that under disk size, we now have additional selections for 32 gigabytes. So you can see 32 gigabytes is now an available disk selection option, assuming that the image that I choose will be a 32 gigabyte image. So if I were to choose something that's bigger than 32 gigabytes, you'll notice 32 gigs is not available because the image is bigger than the disk that I'm selecting. So again, step number 1, log into the VM, make all the necessary changes to be below the 32 gigabyte limit. Step number 2 is run the scripted action on that VM and then click power off and set as image, which is going to commit those changes to the image object. And then step number 3 is either create a new host pool or re-image existing hosts using the newly updated image with a shrunk down disk, selecting the new 32 gigabyte disk size that is available from the OS disk dropdown. I hope you found this useful, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.